Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Our next speaker is Senator Peter Mills.
Well, good morning. I'm Peter Mills. I was born not far north of here in Farmington. I grew up in both Maines, really, and I've lived and worked in both Maines. And I've helped, as a lawyer, a lot of small businesses get started and solve a lot of their problems in this state over the years. For the last 15 years, I've held down a seat in Somerset County in the state Senate, where I represent people who work in 3 union paper mills. It's been a tough seat, folks. But I've won re-election every time I've stood for it. Most recently, I've been serving on the Labor Committee, on the front lines with Jim Hammer, Bruce Bickford, and we're right now contending with a ridiculous proposal to pay people for not working in the most significant recession since 1935, and a proposal by the Democrats to raise the minimum wage in the middle of this recession when people just aren't working enough, let alone for the right wages. So, we're there. I'm reminded, frankly, of somebody that Lois and I served with, Eddie Dexter, who used to campaign with me in the north end of my district. He's now dead. He was a logger. And he used to talk about how the Democrats pretend to be the big friends of small business. And wait, in November of 2010, even after these bills that Bruce and Jim and I were succeeding in defeating, even this November, they would be telling everybody that they are the true friend of small business and that they had the best interests of small business at stake. And Eddie Dexter used to say, these folks remind me of my little granddaughter, who at the age of 6 was in the living room, and he says, I came in from the dining room and I saw my little granddaughter holding her new kitten by the neck, with her hands around his neck. And the poor thing was just struggling for breath to get free. And I said, my goodness, dear, what are you doing with that little kitten? And she says, oh, Granddaddy, I'm just loving this little kitten. She says, that's the Democrats when they go after small business. I'm not really here to make any promises. I'm here to talk to you just a little bit about my credentials and some of the things that we've been able to achieve together, things that I have led on. Back in 1998 and 1999, it was entirely feasible in this state for somebody to get unemployment compensation benefits when fired for grotesque misconduct. I rewrote that law. I negotiated changes to that system. We increased the trust fund from $80 million up to $460. We've got a rational tax system in place. Benefits were reduced where necessary. And we now have one of the strongest unemployment compensation systems in the United States. We're one of the few states in the nation that is not borrowing from the federal government to get through this dreadful time. In 2003, this governor, Paul Batchelor, in his first term, his first budget, tried to sell off the state's liquor business for $125 million to solve a temporary budget issue. In the middle of the night, in April of 2003, I put the kibosh to that, and that revenue from that liquor business will return to state coffers in 4 years. In 2005, he had not learned his lesson. He sold off the lottery, tried to, for $447 million. I was so furious, I went down to the Secretary of State's office, with Carl Turner sitting in the back. We did a handwritten petition for a people's veto. We led that effort, raised and spent $95,000, got 40,000 signatures, and the Democrats came, rewrote the budget, and saved our children from having to pay their bill of $447 million. You people helped, many of you did, and I want to thank you for it. In 2008, most recently, we had a situation where the unions, the public employee unions, the teachers unions, came to the legislature and said, we want to roll back some of the McKernan reforms to the state pension system. We want a new benefit restored. And they said, don't worry, it won't cost much or anything, because the pension system's already got money in it. They think they can absorb it within existing resources. I wrote a 4-page report for the Labor Committee explaining why it was a fraud on Maine taxpayers, why it was going to cost $300 million for our citizens to pay that bill over the next 20 years. Nevertheless, they passed it in the House, they passed it in the Senate, when it got down to the Appropriations Committee, there were 2 Democrats who had read my report, who believed it was true, and who voted against their party along with 5 Republicans, and we killed it by 1 vote. They were so furious. They were so furious that they wrote a letter to every teacher, public employee, and retiree in my district, telling them what I'd done to them and why they disapproved of me. 6 months later, I stood for election in that district, and I won by a margin of 64.5% against the Obama landslide. I won by more votes than any other Republican senator who ran last time. I beat Obama. I even came in slightly ahead of our good Senator Susan Collins. When it comes time to make this crucial selection in June for who should carry our party's banner into the fall, ask yourself 2 questions. Who is it among us who is capable of capturing the present public anger and converting it into public action, appropriate political action, whereby we can overhaul this state that has been the victim of 35 years of democratic mismanagement? And who is it among us who can win? 4 years ago, all the major newspapers said that if I had been nominated as your candidate, that we would have been 4 years ahead of the game, that we would have gotten rid of the present government, and that we would be on our way to lower income taxes, less regulation, quotable pensions, all of the things that we like to see happen. We would have been on progress to achieving those things by now. So listen, I ask you folks, when it comes time to make a decision about putting somebody in the ring, put me in. I've got long arms, no Democrat can land an inside punch. I've been up against Libby Mitchell, John Martin, John Richardson, all of them, Pat McGowan. I know how to beat them. I know how to lead these party folks. Put me in there and I will do you proud, and thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Senator Bills. Now we have Mayor Paul Page.